The On300 rankings have been updated. Tennessee has another 5-star. Who is it? Who moved up the most in the rankings, the final recruiting rankings for this cycle, according to On3? And who are some Tennessee prospects who slipped down in the rankings? That and a whole lot more. We got a fun one today, a Tuesday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Vols. I am your host, Eric Cain. Appreciate you for being here. As always, making Locked On Vols your first listen. Shout out everydayers. We got a whole lot to get into today. Shout out to FanDuel as well. Make every moment more with FanDuel this Super Bowl weekend. So, as I said in the cold open, On300, which is different from the industry rankings over at On3. Of course, I work for, VolQuest.com. It's a Tennessee fan side affiliate of On3. And you've got the On3 industry rankings, which weighs the big four, essentially. You got On3, you got 247, you got Rivals, you got ESPN. And then you've got the On300, which is specifically just On3. And so this is specifically On3's rankings. And then they'll be reflected in the On3 industry rankings because, again, it's weighted differently, for those four big ones into the industry rankings. So I know that was maybe a little confusing, but anyway, updated rankings. I'm going to tell you who went where, all that and more. We got mailbag questions coming up in segment number 3, but one of those mailbag questions, and I think you guys will like this, I'm going to do it in segment number 2, my all-time Tennessee football lineup. Not the all-time greats, not necessarily the best players that played every single position throughout the history of Tennessee, but my favorites. And they can be good players, they can be mediocre players, but it's my interpretation. And we're going to have some fun with it in segment number 2. All right, so On300 rankings updates. Again, these guys have already signed. They're already coming to Tennessee. This is for the class of 2024. But some pretty significant movements here, and we'll start with Jordon Ross. Jordon Ross bolstered up the rankings. He was at number 38 overall, according to On3. He moves up to number 7. This is a top 10 prospect, the highest rated prospect for Tennessee, according to On3, and he is now at number 7 overall. Quite the big jump. He goes up 31 spots and becomes Tennessee's only 5-star, according to On3. Again, the On3 industry rankings, where Mike Matthews is a 5-star as well, because he's a 5-star rated by a couple of these other outlets. But according to On3, Jordon Ross is a 5-star prospect and the number 7 player in the country. Again, I know I'm kind of tossing all these terms around, On3 industry rankings and On300 and all that. Point of the matter is, it's recruiting rankings, and they're all right around the same one another. You can have, a prospect that varies here differently than over here at 247 or Rivals or whatever the case is. It's recruiting rankings. And Jordon Ross received a big bump, and I thought that was really, really cool. Mike Matthews, meanwhile, the wide receiver, still is Tennessee's highest-rated offensive signee. He is a 5-star industry-rated prospect. He's at number 38 overall for On3 in the class of 2024. He moved up 8 spots, so not as big of a jump, but he moved up 8 spots as the number 7 wide receiver in the cycle. And again, you're talking about a top 40 overall player. Peyton Lewis, the running back in this cycle, is a 4-star. Everybody else I'm going to mention throughout the rest of the segment are 4 stars. Ross and Matthews, the only 5 stars. Lewis had the biggest jump of any Tennessee signee. Huge jump. He moves up 67 spots, all the way up to number 67 overall for the class of 2024. The number 4 overall running back in the 2024 cycle. Peyton Lewis, where, Tennessee got him to commits, and at the time you might have thought, okay, well, that's a 4-star running back, is what it is. Don't know how good he really is. As this cycle has gone on and the evaluation period's gone on and he's played his senior year, it looks like Tennessee got a really, really good player in Peyton Lewis. Again, he's the biggest leaper, if you will, moving up 67 spots, according to the updated On3 rankings. As we're talking recruiting here on Locked On Vols, do want to give a quick shout out to LinkedIn Jobs for making all this recruiting coverage possible over here. Every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why you got to try out LinkedIn Jobs, linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions do apply. So Peyton Lewis was the biggest mover, if you will. Another big mover would be Boo Carter, athlete. We know he's going to play the star position or safety in the defensive backfield. We know that he's going to return punts, maybe day one. He's going to return kicks for Tennessee. But Boo Carter, a 4-star, moved up 56 spots in the latest On300 rankings. Moved all the way up to the number 188th prospect in the cycle. So really, really big news there for Boo Carter. Plus 56 is where he goes up in these rankings here in the latest. Kellen Lindstrom as well. I've been high on Kellen Lindstrom. I think Kellen Lindstrom's kind of a diamond in the rough. Not too rough, because, again, he was always kind of in those he was always in the on 300, but he was at prospect number 299. Kellen Lindstrom has moved up 45 spots to number 254, and he's considered the 29th edge of the cycle. Now, edge is another word for Leo in this defense, but in this defense, I believe Kellen Lindstrom is going to slide over and play at the strong side defensive end, whereas where Tyler Barron played this past year, Dominic Bailey, Tyree West, and Tyree Weathersby is going to play in this defense as well. I think that's the future for Kellen Lindstrom, but I would assume that Kellen Lindstrom's probably a redshirt guy in 2024. So those were the big movers. Plus 31 all the way up to number 7 in the country for newly minted 5-star Jordon Ross. Plus 8 up to number 38 for wide receiver Mike Matthews. Plus 67 for running back Peyton Lewis. All the way up to number 67. Plus 45. Nope. Try that again. Plus 56 is how many spots he moved up. That's Boo Carter up to number 188. And plus 45, Kellen Lindstrom from 299 all the way to 254. A couple other ones that moved, or one other one that moved up would be Bennett Warren, the 4-star offensive tackle. He only moved up 3 spots. He went from 288 to 280th. He is the 280th overall prospect in the class, according to On3. Number 24 offensive tackle Bennett Warren, who, like Ross, will not be here until summer, not a spring enrollee, is up 3 spots. Couple of guys who slid. Jake Merklinger. All these guys still retain their 4-star status, but Jake Merklinger slid out of the On300. What I mean by On300 is the top 300 prospects in the country, according to On3. So Jake Merklinger, the quarterback of this class, slid out of the On300. He went down at least 56 spots, where he was at 244 or whatever it was. He's the number 24 quarterback, according to On3. Other books are hot books. Other services are higher on Jake Merklinger, but still, he's the guy that Tennessee won and the guy that Tennessee got, and I think he's going to be fine. He looked really, really good in the Polynesian Bowl. Edwin Spillman, who's ranked the 30th overall linebacker in the class, dropped out of the On300. He's been in and out of the On300 really this entire cycle. Jeremiah Hurd, who Charles Power rated as a 4-star earlier in this cycle, he fell out of the On300. On3 considers him the number 26 defensive lineman in the class, but I believe his future and where he'll probably start when he gets on campus, actually he is on campus, where he'll be repping in spring practice. I believe he's on campus. I'll double check on that. Will be at offensive tackle, and that's what I believe. One other one that retains his On300 status, but he did take a dip in the rankings, is 4-star cornerback Caleb Beasley. Beasley went down 22 spots. He was right around 100 and let's do the math here, Eric. He was 103 in the country, right? 103rd ranked prospect in the country. He slid down to number 125, dropped 22 spots, and he does still retain his number 17 cornerback status in the class. So again, I threw a lot of numbers out at you and everything, but bottom line is this. On3 updated its prospect rankings for the class of 2024. The final time these rankings will be updated for 24, and then all the focus will really shift to the 2025 cycle and so on. Biggest movers, 5-star Jordon Ross, 31 spots. Mike Matthews, plus 8 spots. Peyton Lewis, plus 67. Boo Carter, plus 56. Kellen Lindstrom, plus 45. Bennett Warren, plus 3. Jake Merklinger, minus 56. Caleb, at least 56. Caleb Beasley, minus 22. And then Merklinger, Edwin Spillman, Jeremiah Hurd, all dropped out of the latest On300. So, again, just kind of how you value a prospect. It's an impossible job to do. If you're Charles Power, the director of recruiting and scouting over at On3, really there should be a big time committee to do all this stuff. And it's not that, Charles Power or so-and-so at 247 or so-and-so at Rivals or so-and-so at ESPN hates your team. It's just they're doing literally every prospect in the country. So that is the updates on Tennessee's class of 2024. Some good stuff there. Again, Jordon Ross, top 10 player in the country. That's worth celebrating. Mike Matthews still well. Peyton Lewis, Boot Carter, big movers. Kellen Lindstrom, a big mover. Some good stuff there to kind of highlight here on a Tuesday show. And again, a big shout out to our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs for letting us talk a little recruiting over here on the podcast on Locked On Vols. Hey, when we come back, do want to tell you this is coming from one of the mailbag questions. My all-time volunteer lineup: quarterback, running back, wide receivers, all that and more. I'll tell you that here in a moment on Locked On Vols. Want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Super Bowl week to all who celebrate from FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday, it's all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, pigs in a blanket, and placing some super bets over at FanDuel Sportsbook. We know the matchup. We know it's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. Everybody that was wanting the Lions to continue on, well, Dan Campbell picked a bad day to not convert on being aggressive, if you know what I mean. That kind of got him there into the NFC Championship game, but alas, it did not work out for him against the Niners, blowing a big first half lead. But it's going to be the 49ers. It's going to be the Taylor Swifties. It's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs, and it's going to be a good football game. And I love Super Bowl Sunday because it's time to celebrate with friends, family, and watch the final football game of the year. It's truly an event. And you can make it even more interesting by going over to FanDuel Sportsbook. So many ways to end the season with a W or 2 or maybe 3. Not only can you bet on who's going to win the Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players are going to score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, so much more prop bets, what color is the Gatorade going to be, how long is the national anthem. All that is at FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers today can join. You'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet is $5 or more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. It's the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, welcome back in here to your Tuesday edition of Locked On Vols. We got Award Wednesday coming up here on tomorrow's show as well, so a whole lot to look forward to. This question for the mailbag came from Mr. Clean Gaming, and it inspired me to spend an entire segment on it because I like talking about myself. No, I just think it's really, really fun. I do, and would love to get y'all's input and maybe send me your all-time lineup as well. He says, by position, who would make your all-time Vols lineup in your lifetime? Said, sorry, I know that's going to require a long answer. Yeah, how about an entire segment? Buddy, it's January. I'm always, from now until July, I will take any and all recommendations for what I should spend a segment on, so I thank you for that. But I thought it was really, really cool, and it got me thinking. I spent a few minutes kind of making some notes here, and again, this is how I interpret the question. He says your all-time Vols lineup. How I interpret that is kind of my favorite, not necessarily the best players ever to play the position for Tennessee, the highest rated draft picks, who went on to have the best NFL careers. It's really just in my lifetime, from what I can remember, kind of my guys, if you will, who I like to watch the most. And a lot of these guys are, really, really good players, some of the best to ever play at Tennessee. So here's what I got. And I will go ahead and say this. I'm a young guy. I'm older than some of you guys listening and watching, but I'm still relatively young. I was born in 93. I don't remember Tennessee winning a national championship. I remember working at the radio station, and there was a guy that I was doing a podcast with at the time that was like a year or two younger than me, and he's like, oh, I remember sitting on the couch watching Tennessee win the national championship. I'm like, no, you don't. You're younger than me, and I don't remember that. My earliest memories of Tennessee football, gosh, man, I mean, it's Casey Clausen, the quarterback. I remember that, but I mean, again, you're a young guy and you might have glimpses and everything, but like really paying attention to who's out there on the field and what's going on, you can't tell me you remember that if you're younger than me. So everybody's different, but I mean, for me, I don't remember that at all. And I don't remember Peyton playing at Tennessee. I don't really remember T. Martin. I do remember Casey. That's just kind of where I was as a young kid. And, I was always around the game because my family was always watching it. My dad was always watching it. But I have no Peyton Manning on my list or T. Martin or Al Wilson's because I don't really remember them much at Tennessee. And I know a lot of you old heads are out there rolling your eyes like, golly, I get it. But that's kind of where my list begins, if you will. So without further ado, quarterback. Slim pickings, really in my lifetime. Eric Cain was a good quarterback. Casey Clausen was a good quarterback. Tyler Bray put up stats. Josh Dobbs was a good quarterback. But really, recency bias, give me 2 years of Hendon Hooker. There wasn't a whole lot that Hendon Hooker couldn't do. When I was a kid, Eric Cain was my quarterback. Then I got to work with him at the radio station. I put him down. No, I'm just kidding. But Eric Cain is my quarterback, and Josh Dobbs did so many great things. But give me Hendon Hooker, man. And maybe that's recency bias, but he was phenomenal. Running back. Again, so many great running backs to come through Tennessee. But on my list, give me Montario Hardesty. If he could have stayed healthy, man, he could have been even better, in my opinion. Jalen Hurd. A lot of Tennessee fans don't like Jalen Hurd. It was a really bad ending in Tennessee. Whether Butch lied to him in terms of the offense, it was going to run, whatever. He was a really good running back at the University of Tennessee. And people want to complain about how Alvin Kamara never got on the field and everything. Well, I think they should have worked to get this conversation for another day. I think they should have worked to get them both on the field at the same time or let him have a bigger role in it for sure because he's an NFL player and he's done a lot of great things for a lot of many years on the field. But Jalen Hurd was good. Jalen Hurd was really good. My pick's Montario Hardesty, but we need to highlight Jalen Hurd. We need to highlight Arian Foster, even though that last year was really bad for Arian Foster. Tight end, certainly not the most talented, certainly not the best tight end to ever play here. But, man, I remember Luke Stalker doing a lot of good things for Tennessee way back in the day. Give me Luke Stalker at tight end. Wide receiver, again. So many great wide receivers, especially in the 90s, but that's kind of disqualified for me a little bit. Robert Meacham would be my wide receiver 1. Justin Hunter did not have a good NFL career, had a really, really good season with Tyler Bray as his quarterback. He would be my wide receiver number 2. And then you can go a couple of different directions here, but I want to put the dog over there, man. I wanted to put Juwan Jennings on this list, and man, he's doing a lot in the NFL right now. Kind of sparked the comeback with that catch on third down, throwing across the body, getting chased as Brock Purdy. Juwan Jennings was a really, really reliable receiver for Tennessee in 2019 and in 2018 as well. And, of course, had some rough goes of it here at Tennessee earlier in his career. But when it's all said and done, you look at some of the Tennessee wide receiver records, he's in the top 10 in a lot of those. So give me Juwan Jennings. Offensive tackle, Reggie Coleman. Earlier, I do remember Reggie Coleman, but that was early. Juwan James, very much remember Juwan James, 2 studs. Guards, I listed like 4 here. It's my list, I'll cheat. Chris Scott, Jaquez McClendon, Zach Fulton, who had a long NFL career, Trace Smith, of course, who's going to the Super Bowl. All 4 of those guards I very much remember and had a long, long careers. Center, I don't remember Spencer Riley playing center at Tennessee because I don't remember the 90, anything before really 2000, 2001. But hey, I like Spencer Riley. We're friends. He's head coach of my alma mater at Jeff County, his alma mater as well. So I'm going to put Spencer Riley on this list. But also, I guess I'll put, I don't know. I think Cooper Mays is a really good center for this offense. And so, the center position might be incomplete, but give me Spencer Riley and give me Cooper Mays. Let's go to defense real quick. And I did a 4-3, okay? I didn't necessarily do outside linebacker, middle linebacker, defensive end, I just did 2 defensive ends while I listed several names of some positions because, again, defense is a rotational position. But I don't have like a star, if you will. So anyway, this is my list. Defensive ends, pass rushers, Malik Jackson, the mayor of Saxonville. Derek Barnett, the SEC's all-time sack leader. Paris Harrelson, oh yeah. Some good football players there. Defensive tackles. This is going way back for me. But I do remember John Henderson, Albert Hainsworth. And then I mentioned on the podcast a couple weeks ago, maybe my favorite Tennessee player all time. I don't know why, but may he rest in peace. I love the guy when he was here. Jesse Mahalona, defensive tackle. Give me those. That defensive line is fierce. Linebackers. Kevin Barnett. Gerard Mayo, who is now the head coach of the New England Patriots. and Kevin Simon, who does a lot of work for 99.1 The Sports Animal. Man, I love Kevin Burnett, Kevin Simon, and I believe it was Ryan Carl. I think they played a couple of years together at linebacker. Of course, I very much remember Gerard Mayo, such a stud. Those are some good linebackers there. Defensive secondary, safety, Eric Berry. Who else? Cam Sutton, I know he played some corner. I know he played some safety. I know he plays nickel in the NFL, but I kind of have him listed as a defensive back / safety. Cam Sutton, give me Eric Berry. And then at cornerbacks, even though Jason Allen played a lot of safety throughout his time, Jason Allen at cornerback and Jonathan Wade at cornerback. This defense, really this offense too, but this defense is good. And so I didn't do special teams, but I can tell you right now, a punter, give me a Colquitt. Kicker, give me a James Wilhoit because of his kick against Florida, 51 yards in 04. Long snapper, I don't know, give me Matthew Solansky, who's been there for a decade and still playing here, a Morristown West native. Yeah, that was a whole lot of fun to kind of go and do that. And I encourage you guys to make your list and maybe let me know. Send them in at _Cain or at Lockdown Vols. Comment on the YouTube channel. Not the all-time best lineup ever, but my lineup. Kind of make it your own. That's what we used to say on the starting lineup over at 99.1 The Sports Animal. You make it your own. So, Mr. Clean Gaming, I appreciate you sending that in. That was a whole lot of fun, and I encourage everybody else who's watching right now and listening right now to send in yours as well. Hey, when we come back, we'll get into the rest of your mailbag questions. All that and more right here on your Tuesday Locked On Vols. I know we come here to sports for an escape and some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we just talk for a minute, me to you, and kind of how we can get prepared for some of life's crazy situations? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics. It's during the worst flu season, some have said in over a decade. That can be scary. I can imagine a more helpless feeling than if one of my loved ones or maybe one of your loved ones got sick. And because of supply chain issues, it kept them from maybe life-saving medication that they needed. Thankfully, we're going to be okay because there's an option out there. It can be an option for you and me, and that's Jase Medical. The Jase case is packed with 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, skin infections, among others. This stuff could happen to any of us. Visit jasemedical.com if you want to see that option. And complete your physician encounter. It'll be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at only a fraction of the cost. It's never been more important to be prepared today. Go to jasemedical.com and use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your order. Again, it's an option for you. That's at jasemedical.com, promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your order today with the Jase case. All right, a final segment left here of this Tuesday edition of Locked On Vols, and we will get into your mailbag questions. There's a lot of questions, more than I thought we would get in today, because again, I just did a mailbag at the end of last week because I was out of town on vacation the week prior. But I thank you for sending in your questions, and there's some on here that I'm not going to get to today. There's one specifically. I don't know where it is, but it's I'll see it whenever I get there. But it's a really good one that I want to spend a segment on maybe later this week. So if you don't hear yours answered, hopefully I'll get to it later in the week. Let's go to Jared. Jared said, should we be concerned with Cam Seldon's potential lack of vision? Not sure if he's shown that sufficiently in his time on the field, but if he can't provide meaningful reps as the number 2 running back, we might be in some trouble in the run game. Yeah, I don't think we've seen enough. We saw Cam Seldon mop-up duty, and we saw Cam Seldon as the RB2 behind Dylan Sampson in the Citrus Bowl. And I think he had 56 yards on 10 carries, 11 carries, something like that, averaging about 5 yards per carry. I don't think we've seen enough whatsoever. But if for some reason there were to be an injury or he wasn't producing, I know the staff's high on Peyton Lewis. He's new. I get it. We just talked about how he soared up the latest On300 rankings, 67 spots back in segment number 1. I know they're high on Peyton Lewis, and so I think he's going to see some action regardless as well. Let's go to Aaron Hurd. Do you think that in the time... Oh, no, I thought this is the one I was going to skip. No, this is it. Okay, do you think that in the time of the transfer portal being as it is, do we actually get to see both Merklinger and George McIntyre, Jake Merklinger, George McIntyre, play at Tennessee before one decides to transfer? With Nico starting this year and next, do you think both will actually have loyalty to sit the bench? It's a great question, man. And I think if you're just playing the numbers, especially at that position, you would assume that somebody's going to leave. And that's just the nature of the beast. The fact that Georgia held on to all 4 of its quarterbacks for 2 years, or maybe not 2 years, but had a full quarterback room for like a couple of years. Job well done, Kirby. I don't know how you did it, but what's his name? Brock Vandergrift just now left and went to Kentucky. You just don't see highly recruited prospects stay and sit anymore. They want an opportunity. So whether that's George McIntyre, who's going to be a 5-star by the time he gets here to Tennessee, it's got a whole lot of intangibles. In-state guy. I have a hard time seeing that he would leave. Not saying that Jake Merklinger would leave, but if you play the numbers this era in football, it wouldn't shock me whatsoever if one of those guys leaves. So we'll see what happens. By the time McIntyre's here, Jake Merklinger would be in his 2nd season with the program, and Nico would be a junior. And so, does Nico go to the draft? You would assume that he will. That's just something we got to play TBD. Robo22. Eric, do you have any idea where the football team is right now as far as numbers? Good question, man, and I wish I had an answer for you, but to be honest, I don't. I don't have an idea where the numbers are. I know that they're going to leave some spots open, potentially, to get maybe a guy or two in the spring. You got to leave some open. I think you're down to 83 because, again, the scholarship reduction over the next couple of years due to the NCAA violations. Also, he says, are there any candidates for... Oh, no, that's another question. To answer your question, long story short, a whole lot of nothing. I do not know where the numbers are. But if guys elect to leave the program in the spring, then that will open up some spots. And I would imagine that at least 1 or 2 will leave in spring because you're going to go, you're going to rep, and you're going to be going through spring practice for a month and a half, and you're going to see kind of where you are on the depth chart. And then I would see some of those guys potentially will look for, greener pastures. Robo22 also wants to know, besides Frank Anderson, Josh Elander, who are some other coaches in the Baseballs program and what are their jobs? Tony Vitello, head coach. Josh Elander, of course, he's over recruiting, but he works with the catchers. He does a lot of stuff. He's Tony's right-hand man. Frank Anderson, of course, we know he's a pitching coach. Richard Jackson is the recently promoted 3rd full-time assistant, a former pitcher for Tennessee, so he helps work with the pitchers as well. Luke Bonfield, his official title is Director of Player Development, but he can also help with the pitchers a little bit. Quentin Eberhardt is the Director of Strength and Conditioning. He left briefly to go to the Cubs for a little bit, came back. He's got loads of experience. You hear the players talk in interviews. They reference Q all the time. That's Quentin Eberhardt. And then the last one I'll highlight is Chad Zurcher. He's the Director of Baseball Operations, but, Chad does literally everything behind the scenes. Those are the key guys. Of course, Sean McCann, he works with some videos, and Jeff Wood is kind of over the health of the baseball team and all that as well. So not as big of a staff, obviously, as football, but those are some of the guys that we'll highlight there. Let's go to Grant's. In your opinion, is this year's Tennessee basketball team? Is this year's Tennessee basketball team has to make a huge run in the tournaments? I feel that next year's team will be tough to match talent and experience of this year's team at the moment. Yeah, at the moment for sure, because Dalton Connect's playing just on another world right now. It's hard to forecast, right? I mean, you don't want to just say, we talk about that window for the college football playoff as being like the next 2 years with Nico. Basketball is just so unpredictable, man. It's all about matchups, how you're playing at the time, individual matchups within the matchup, team on team. I just think you need to max out what you got right now. And you got a guy that's one of the best scorers in all the country, and that's Dalton Connect. And will he continue this run of scoring in the 30s and knocking on the door of 40 consecutively once we get into mid-March? I don't know. You hope so. But I think you really need to maximize what you got this year, because you got a couple of fifth-year seniors or long-time COVID seniors in Josiah Jordan-James, Santiago Vescovi. You got a 3-year point guard, one of the best point guards in the country, in Zakai Ziegler. Of course, I've already mentioned Dalton Connect. You're getting a breakout year from Jonas Adu. Gainey's starting to come around. You got a lot of tools in the tool shed there. I think you really, really need to maximize what you got this year, because there's going to be talent on the roster for sure next year, but how will it all come together? And will you have a Dalton Connect? No, you won't. All right, Sam Smith, 2233, Mr. Baseball Intellectual, appreciate that. 2021 team had Hundley that came out of the bullpen as a guy they needed to shut it down to end the game. In 2022, you had Redmond Walsh, Cannon Sewell. 2023, you had Chase Burns that could come in at any point and shut it down. Who is the guy in 2024? Great question. We don't know yet. We might not know until conference play. I mean, Chase Burns wasn't that guy until towards the end of the regular season. I don't know, or at least midway, whenever, you know, he had that appearance against Vanderbilt and did so well. I don't know. Marcus Phillips, maybe. He's getting a lot of praise here in preseason. Two-way player out of JUCO. Nate Snead, what's his role going to be in the bullpen? He's a guy that can hit triple digits. Would love to have him at the back end of the bullpen. I would kind of start the conversation with those two guys. WEBB says, why do players lose stars with ESPN, On3, etc. after they commit to the Vols? Do tell. Again, there's no conspiracy theory out there. I know a lot of people want to believe it, but it's all about the director for that said publication, how they view a player and how they go about ranking them. And so it just is what it is. Carlos says, would Seton, Jordon Seton, who signed with Colorado, would he have been a better get than Lance Hurd? With Hurd, you got 1 year of SEC experience, 3 years of eligibility. Jordon Seton, no experience, right? 4 years of eligibility. Do you think that we would have landed Seton? Let's see here. Do you think we would have landed Seton if, do you think we landed Hurd if Seton was already in the boat? To that question, no. If Seton was here, Lance Hurd would not have come here. To answer your question on which is the better get, I don't know. We'll see what Jordon Seton is down the line. I mean, he's a really, really intriguing prospect. Same as Lance Hurd, but Lance Hurd's got his toes wet a little bit. He's been in a collegiate strength and conditioning program. He knows this league. I think those are all pluses. But in a couple of years, in 1 year, Jordon Seton would have been the same way. So I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and say that, oh, everything's great. You know, you don't want Jordon Seton anyway. No, you wanted Jordon Seton. He's a really good player. But you got Lance Hurd out of the portal, and that is a really, really, really good get. Quickly, got to move through here. Let's go to the messages. This is from Braden. Braden, your question I'm going to hold until later in the week because I think that's a really, really good question. Trevor, if the season ended today, where does Dalton Connect rank in the history of Tennessee basketball players? I think he's hands down the best in the Rick Barnes era, and I love Great and Admiral. See, it's interesting, right? Great and Admiral were here for 4 years. Dalton Connect's not even been here a full season. But if he keeps up this pace, who knows? I think it's very TBD right now because the season is not over. Where do the Vols finish in terms of, you know, the March Madness tournament when it's all said and done? Will those games, maybe if you lead it to the Final Four, then sure. I think he'll be remembered along with the Allen Houstons, the Tony Whites, you know, the Ernie, Bernie, Chris Lofton. I mean, some of those guys. In terms of score, yeah, he's the best of the Rick Barnes era, even more than Grant and Admiral for sure. So I know you said if the season ended today, but you can't answer that question yet because really if the season ended today, Tennessee's not accomplished anything. You know what I'm saying? Don't mean to dismiss it, but it just kind of is what it is. Last question, it goes to Garrett. We are running out of time, but we'll go to Garrett real quick. Going into spring practice, who were a few people on both sides of the ball with a big opportunity to earn playing time? Who were some possible portal entries you could see following the spring period? Again, I don't know who some of those guys could be who would leave in the spring because where are you on the depth chart? You know, where are you in spring practice? If you're fourth string and you're a veteran, I don't see why you want to stick around. And so a lot of that's kind of TBD. I'll give you one on both offense and defense who I think could stand to really benefit from a good spring practice and could go in there and play an awful lot. I think it's a big spring for John Slaughter in the defensive secondary. There's a starting job up for grabs at safety. Coaches raved about him, even though he didn't play last year. I think it's a big spring for him. And then I'll continue to say Sham Umarov. Tennessee needs a left guard. He's a tackle. Can he slide inside and play guard? Tennessee loses Tennessee loses John Campbell, Dane Davis, a couple tackles. You will have Lance Hurd next year, but Tennessee will need a tackle next year. Sham, whether he's a starter or not this year, he needs a big spring. You need something that you can feel confident on moving forward, say if there's an injury or just for 2025 and beyond, because Nico's still going to be here in 2025 and he will need to be protected. All right, again, a couple of questions I didn't get to. I do apologize, but thank you guys so much for sending in those questions. We'll do it every single Tuesday, mailbag edition of the show right here on Locked On Vols. Had a whole lot of fun giving you my favorite all-time Vols lineup. Would love to hear yours and discussing the big movers in the latest On300 recruiting rankings. Fun show today. We'll be back for more Award Wednesday and a whole lot more that you got to look forward to here on a Wednesday. Locked On Vols coming up tomorrow. This is Locked On Vols.